Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Friday lunchtime lectures here at the Open Data Institute. My name's Rachel Leach. I'm head of network here at the ODI, and today we're delighted to have Antonio Pisano speaking on behalf of Marcel Architects and Constructing Excellence, who are a member of the Open Data Institute. If you'd like to join in as we go along, you can tweet using the hashtag ODI Fridays. After Antonio's presentation, which will be about 20 minutes, we'll have plenty of time for question and answers. We are streaming live onto YouTube, so if you're asking Q&A at the end, do be aware that anything you say is going to be broadcast. Hopefully we won't have any more technical difficulties. I'll leave Antonio to introduce himself and the many acronymed organisations he works for and with, including RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors.
More RIBA. Shall I get through
RIBA? Let you do this bit. This is why we have the expert here. I'll hand over to Antonio and I'll be back with you at the end. Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here despite the particularly inspiring weather today. My name is Antonio Pisano. I'm an architect and I find myself belonging to that kind of odd crowd of construction industry people that really like to flirt with technology and innovation. And the rest of our industry kind of look at us like, why are you doing this? You know, this is embarrassing. You know, try and being innovative. What I will try to do today, and I know time is kind of tight, is to share with you what I think, after a few years, might be the future of the construction industry in a few years down the line. I will have 3 videos. The first one is an interview, not the entire thing, just a clip of an interview we shot as part of G4C with Peter Ansford when he was UK government chief advisor for the construction industry. And I thought him, rather than me, would be quite good sharing with us what he thinks the construction industry is. And then I will report quickly on the work we've done with BRE and ODI on importing open data in the construction industry, and then share some kind of future thinking with you. So without further ado, I think I could do this and let Peter tell us something.
For the real economy, creating employment, supporting growth, and improving health. But also, the use of construction as a weapon of colonization, the destruction of the planet's ecological balance, an everyday reminder of social inequality and gentrification. So what can construction do to save the world? And what kind of world are we living in? We have the pleasure today to talk about the future of construction with a former UK government.
Well, is it okay? Just try again. I know what it is. It's El Capitan. It's an absolutely pathetic OS. If it happens again, I will just summarize what he was meant to say.
Since the first human settlement,
but you know, we all seem
and yet everybody's paying their subs to these trade bodies, so they must be adding some value. That's why.
Well, there might be a perception that they're adding value.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you know, BIM has created the biggest wave of enthusiasm and pride regarding reducing fragmentation. Does that work?
In many, it has, yeah. Yeah, it's working, but this such a slow-moving industry in terms of evolution.
Is that because of the burden of our legacy?
I don't know. No, I think we're just risk averse.
Right.
Hugely risk averse. And yet, the margins in this industry, if you look at the margins of tier 1 contractors in particular, just use those as an example, you know, they're pathetically small. Companies are surviving on 1.5% profit margin. Why do it? What's the point? And they don't. And the point is they don't need to. There are with BIM, with off-site manufacturing, with all sorts of supply chain issues, supply chain integration, they can be much more profitable. And if they're more profitable, they'll invest more in people. The image will improve. It's all circular.
Wouldn't you agree that transparency can be a great enabler in mitigating risk early on, big project and small projects alike, in a way that we could actually know a little bit more of what we're doing? Part of the issue, being an active actor in the construction, is that information is not always there when you need it, and you bring a lot of risk along with you.
I agree. And a lot of inefficiency,
Yeah.
huge inefficiency. So yeah, I think transparency has a lot to offer. I think we adopt outdated processes in this industry. We've always done it this way, so therefore we're very suspicious of change, and that's holding back the industry. And I think that's as true in the use of technology, in the use of new procurement techniques, in the use of BIM and digital opportunities.
So that was a few months ago, and it was really interesting conversation. You could feel an entire career condensed in a few words. So, is a risk-adverse leadership. We've been doing this thing exactly in this way for so many years. Why should we bother changing, really? And I was glad to hear that Peter thought transparency greatly has the opportunity to help us here. And I'm pretty happy that the ODI has become, over the years, one of the partners of this slowly happening revolution in the construction industry. So we need to become more transparent, as lack of transparency is not just an issue. Sometimes it's the business case for many of the operators in our industry. A few months ago, actually a year ago almost, with BRE, ODI, Construction Excellence and G4C, and here's the acronym starting, we started a series of documentaries, very short bullets of information. What we try to do is to bring some of the startups, the great dynamic companies that have been here fostered, to talk with the big guys, the slow, massive companies in the construction industry, just to see if there's any opportunity for collaboration. And the outcome was quite inspiring. Obviously, one side of the table never heard of the other side. And even without pushing the conversation in any particular direction, collaboration just started to happen. So I will very quickly show you what we did, and as a result of that, why we're here today. How can open data help the construction industry to overcome the issues that we are facing, ahead of the 2025, milestone?
Open data is any data which an organisation chooses to share and make available to other people.
They're realising that their data has a fundamental value and a power which can only be unlocked by opening it up to the general public and to public.
It's a struggle for a lot of the incumbent players to even understand what it is.
Why be in an industry where you're the top player, but actually the average is dragged down by the quality of the people around you? Much better to be in an industry where the average is higher, and you can still be the top player.
This has been a learning experience for me, so I thank you both for that.
It was obviously too emotional for my Wi-Fi connection to being able to deal with it. But I think we've had enough of YouTube. You kind of got the gist of it. And we get to what we... Right, the reason why we're here today, we are going to talk about construction. So we had a bit of a slower start with a few videos, and now we get into some hopefully controversial opinions. So I work in the construction industry, a few of you guys also do, and it's great to see more and more people from construction at the ODI. That's kind of a, optimistic view on the future. Why bother with construction? I mean, always been there. Well, it's a fundamental part of our economy. £90 billion turnover and 2.9 million jobs. So actually, kind of 10% of the UK population works in construction. Quite a few people. Are they going to retain their job? Hopefully. Not just positive side to construction, but also quite concerning aspect. 40% of the CO2 emissions in this country come from construction. So if we can fix the carbon footprint, the environmental footprint of construction, we would be in already for a low carbon economy. And over the years, I kind of learned that construction hasn't got really the best reputation. People kind of think a construction is kind of male, pale and stale, slightly overweight men, muddy boots, hard hats. And after 15 years involved in construction, I can say that such reputation is well deserved. We need to change, guys. We really need to change. It's just not happening this way. We like to think that we are a sustainable sector. My own personal view is that we're not. If you just take population forecast and projection and multiply it by the amount of CO2 we produce and other suboptimal outcome such as gentrification and very, very low profit margin, you end up with a situation which is not really that great. So construction really has to shape up. And we are working, and some people around here are the main actors of this small revolution in construction. But as it is, construction is a system that needs to be fixed. And one of the most concerning aspects of construction, which I like to mention, is what's called performance gap. And if you don't work in construction, it's quite a thrilling topic. So basically, as an industry, we say, we're going to deliver that building, it's going to use that amount of energy, produce that amount of CO2, and make everyone happy. And it's going to look great. And for instance, this little diagram in the middle of the screen now shows a certain amount of expected energy cost. All right, so the building gets finished, everyone is happy more or less, and then starts to work. What's interesting is from the design parameters, there is already a 70% increase in energy cost from what you think you're going to do from the actual best practice buildings in use. Not only that, but from your design parameters, there's a plus 240% additional cost of the energy when in use. So basically what we're saying is that we design things to work in a certain way, and they don't. For all sorts of reasons, because people don't operate as we design them to operate, which is very disappointing. They have this kind of free will and different things they do. But also because systems don't work in a coordinated, integrated way as we plan them to do. So we need basically to reduce the unpredictable outcome of in-use performance and trying to reduce this performance gap. And this is one of the main reasons why construction as an industry is not reliable. It's not reliable in terms of return on investment. We think to be able to deliver at a certain time, a certain cost, and sometimes it happens. When you're on the Olympics, great. If you're not the Olympics, it might be tougher. So we have innovative tools, and what we're going to explore here together is a bit of forward thinking of where these tools may take us a few years down the line. Many of you must have heard of BIM, Building Information Modeling. If you haven't, in a nutshell, basically is a way to build a database which holds together all relevant or as relevant as possible data mapping the building. So you build in that database the design information, the cost information, the environmental footprint information in one beautifully packed, very difficult to access, proprietary data set, and then you can export quite interesting stuff as you do what Autodesk tells you to do. The other aspect which is really helping reducing the performance gap is off-site manufacturing. So we kind of know that slightly overweight workers with muddy boots, of course it's not just that, may deliver a certain degree of difference between what we design and what actually gets built. So in order to reduce the unknown elements of a construction site, we're trying to build as much as possible in a factory. So we've done it in the 1970s, it looked a little bit Soviet, kind of dropped it for 20 years, and now it's coming back with a new glamour. So off-site manufacturing really is a way to control, to a greater degree of accuracy, what we build and how that built thing is going to perform. And then, and this is why here at the ODI, there is the Internet of Things. And it's amazing to see the figures that show up on your screen as soon as you Google IoT. It will be the most amazing thing in the world, obviously. In 2008, the things exceeded humans in connection to the internet. And the number of crazy statistics about IoT can put us to sleep really quickly. But fundamentally, what we're talking about is data, right? Okay, so before we were designing things and hoping for them to work, and now we are designing things in a way that would match our expected data set, and then we can measure whether the object is actually performing in the way we want. Right, so we got this data. What could we do with this? You know, how much access do we have? You know, how is our data actually ours? Right, so this gets a bit more interesting. Sorry, you know, absolutely, yeah, fine, whatever. We're improving our tools. We're developing a system that can produce real-time data flow. What do we do now? And that's the interesting bit. We basically have two options. One option is to develop open standards. You know, the really clever guy that founded this place, Tim Berners-Lee, once told me that they had the opportunity when the internet had to be built to develop a free service in which everyone was able to produce content, or a paid service. And there was a very large telecoms operator at the time that said it has to be a paid service. You know, it's a kind of telephone, really, very similar to telephone. And they said, no, this has to be free. The revenues will come from positive externalities that got nothing to do with how long you stay connected or how much data you download and upload. And this was last year at the ODI summit, and I was very thrilled. He basically said, if you want to turn the construction industry into an open data industry, you need to demonstrate that transparency can be a profit enabler. Otherwise, just forget about it. If I was good enough to develop a financial model to demonstrate how an open API, open protocols, open data industry may work, we might have been there already. The reality is that we are going down the line of proprietary, well-sealed packages which holds our data sets that towards which we have a very limited access, and then we have to negotiate how much data we can extract and how can we use the data after it's been extracted. So in other words, trying to be more straightforward, I design a building using BIM. Right? So I digitally build the entire thing. The windows, the finishes, the airflow rate, heat loss, all that is in the database. That database belongs to a program, and the program is licensed to me. So I need to make sure that I've got enough access to my data to use the same amount of data to develop different apps or different tools, which will be the open data scenario. If that accessibility is not granted, then we might be losing an opportunity. That's a quick way to put it. Or, to put it into more dystopian and slightly more sci-fi proportions, we may be creating a disruptive monopoly innovation scenario, which might not be good for us in the long terms. So far, feels great. The big packages we use do save time and money, but as the data will grow so big to the point that the tools to manage it are not yet being developed, we might need greater degree of freedom in accessing the data our industry produces. If we don't have that access, then different things might happen. Let's see what. So this disruptive renewable innovation, what is it? Well, it starts by mapping the real economy. So you look at an existing economic model, let's say the construction industry, or let's say the hospitality industry, or let's say private transportation industry. So there is an economic model that already works. There's a demand, there is a supply. Then you create a data infrastructure. So whatever happens in that part of the economy gets mapped. So you start to track and record everything about that segment of the country's economy. And you learn everything. Well, once you've learned everything, you can have an intermediate phase, which is a sharing economy, which is not meant to last forever. The sharing economy can only work if you have a consistent surplus in resources. Try to establish a sharing economy in a third world country or in a developing economy country. It can't work. It can only work here because we have a surplus. But what happens next? So now there was an economy, I mapped it, I machine learned everything out of it, and I can now deliver at a fraction of a cost because technology is enabling me to replace some of the production costs with automation. All right, but then what about replacing the entire supply side with automated services? Obviously, the last step is automation. Is full automation, is zero marginal costs. So I've learned how the industry worked. I created a model. The model is a predictive model because I got enough big data to run some analysis on it. I then replaced elements, parts of the production system, crowdfunding it, asking anyone to help, which is the intermediate sharing economy model, and then I just fully automated it. And then it gets a little bit more kind of interesting. 2008, three great guys in LA set up this little thing called Airbnb. No need to use the usual stats. You know, biggest hotel in the world doesn't own a single bedroom. If we look at the difference between Airbnb and any other hotel operator, what they've done, basically trying to consistently reduce cost in the way they allocate sales, they do their marketing, and they produce their services. Have they entirely automated their supply chain? Not quite, not there. But they are on the way. So as you consistently increase the amount of automation in these three key sectors of your business case, you just become a disruptive innovator. Someone who can sell at such a low price that competitors just go, no way even to try competing. 1 year later, there's a 19 there, Uber comes in. And thank God for them, because I was very late today, and if it wasn't for Uber, I wouldn't be here now. Same thing. Instead of having highly skilled black cabs driver, who had to study for a long time to understand how London road network works, you just provide an app, which is in real time, and fulfill the knowledge gap between any driver and a black cab driver. In the same way, Airbnb used technologies to improve the sales and marketing and user experience service, which otherwise will be produced by kind of costly and very annoying humans. Okay, so have they achieved full automation? Not quite. We're not quite there. But we know the amount of investment coming from everywhere into Uber, because we know that 10 years down the line, we're going to have fully automated cars, which I would personally love because I hate driving. So this disruptive monopoly innovation, it might sound a bit of a narrative device, but actually this is the normal trend that a globalized capitalist economy would develop. You reduce your costs, increase your margin. And if you've got technology on your side, an entire globalized market to sell to, it could be quite interesting. You might not have heard of Home. is to be founded in 2019. It's not quite there. And I was reading this future paper saying that Home will be the world's first super intelligent estate agent. Home, just think about your next home, and then everything will be done for you. So imagine a way in which you may be able to buy your house in a way that is as simple as tapping like on your Facebook page. Let's imagine that it will be possible to line up the data required to map, as we said earlier, to map existing economy model, to have a predictive model of land, investment, design, planning, construction, sales, and maintenance. Let's just play with it. 2019, we might not be there yet. What's interesting is that in the current business model, each of these steps is a silo. I mentioned earlier that lack of transparency is not just an issue, it's the business case for a great part of our industry. So you jump from the land little market into the investment little market, into the design little market, and every single time you have a huge bottleneck, actually, a very tiny bottleneck of data. You have to start from scratch. This delivers a stupidly enormous inefficiency as a system, but also guarantees many people a job. As the cycle finishes, from maintenance you go back to sales, and you can resell your products, or from maintenance you go back to land, and you redevelop your site. Now, it would be very difficult to find the data required to have an integrated, consistent, real-time updated data set to map all this stuff. Is it really that difficult? How much data do we need to profile the future customer of Home Super Intelligent Estate Agent Service? Well, we would need to know where he is, where he wants to be, where he normally goes. We will need to have access to his banking profile, how much money he gets, projections, pension funds, so on. Since we have to sell him or her a piece of design, it would be good to know whether he liked modern or old-fashioned. So we need to know something about his taste or her taste. We need to be able to make sure that his or her business case goes easily through planning. And then we need to know his energy consumption so that we can have an all-encompassing offer. So when he taps like, everything is sorted out for you. Energy account, telecoms, internet, even the furniture could be integrated. On the other hand, we know that this system, this deeply intelligent system, needs to be able to automate design, off-site manufacturing, facility management, estate management, and all the legal bits and pieces required to sell this one-tap homes. Obviously, this is really difficult. Obviously, it's really quite tricky to find all this data, unless you're these guys. If you call Google, you are already mapped. Your phone, if you're using Android, or I'm sure Apple does the same, little cookie exercises, knows exactly where you are. It can predict where in the year you might be going, so on and so forth. I'm not going to do the dystopian Marvel comics character now. But Google is a big one. That's kind of interesting, kind of easy. The taste one was a funny one. How do I predict what Ben likes as a house? Well, then Ben happens to have House, the app, installed on his iPad, and also he's got a Pinterest account. All right. So I can apply an artificial intelligence, like some kind of Google recently developed system that can recognize cats to Ben's Pinterest account, and very easily I will have a profile of what you like, what you don't like. Obviously, some good people at Zoopla have finally improved the property search engine by simply mashing together some data sets. So I have pretty good assessment of what Ben might need for himself and his family. And it happens that he also had installed a Nest smart meter and a few other smart meter IoT gadgets, which between now and 2019 will be very cheap and available on the market. So if we could aggregate all this data, then I know quite a bit about Ben. Ben, sorry to mention you just because I like you so much. It is a narrative device. Home, the super intelligent estate agent, doesn't exist quite yet, but we know that a huge amount of data is being constantly released by our industry. And there is a serious risk that when we actually achieve complete automation, it might not be for people's good. There's a beautiful book by Paul Mason about called Post-Capitalism. And it goes back to Karl Marx's theory of machines. So basically the long story in a short capsule is when you successfully replace humans with machines, and softer machines are particularly efficient machines, you basically can deliver stuff for free. You've got an option there. Either you control the monopoly of data, setting the price for something which hasn't got production cost, or you give it for free because it's got zero marginal cost. So there's a quite interesting ethical question that arises from automation. Again, I'm a man of the construction industry. I'm trying to help my industry survive, basically. So what can we do? Well, I think we should work both on the demand side and supply side. Now I'm coming with the construction excellence message of collaboration. So we need to engage with the demand side with our clients, whether big clients or small clients, to realize that they're not data vegetables. They're not meant to be harvested every now and then without them knowing. They are data growers. We produce data. I should be aware of the amount of data, the quality of data, and the rate of data I produce because that's got value. Well, if it's got a value, I should be entitled to know what value there is and if I want to release it or not. And I might actually be very happy to release it, only if I knew what's going on. But also the supply side has to work better together. At the moment, we still believe that a highly competitive macho culture of everyone against each other is going to help us improve our margins. Quite the opposite is the case. You know, the big guys of the software industry are just deep feeding us with small packets of software intelligence. In the meanwhile, are kind of robbing the data that comes from our industry, and sooner or later they will replace us, as we saw for the home super intelligence estate agents. So if we develop a better culture of collaboration, we might be on the path to solve not only the survival of the construction industry, but also the single most important issue that we're now facing, which is global warming. And I think the first step to take, the first part of the industry that has to be activated towards a more collaborative, more efficient way of working is the existing housing stock. Now, for many of you work in construction, this is absolutely obvious. If you don't work in construction, you might never heard of this huge elephant in the room, which is the existing housing stock. Why is that important? Well, because we kind of committed to reduce CO2 emission by 80% by 2050. Thank God for that, only if we could do it. 25% of such emission are only coming from existing housing. And at any given time, existing housing represents 99% of the entire housing stock. In 2050, where we're supposed to be cut our carbon emission by 80%, sorry, this is an unwilling pun. Anyway, 80% of the existing housing will still be there. We're talking about 1850 houses. It's the equivalent to having a 4T in front of you as you're trying to drive with your Tesla. This is the construction industry. It's basically having mammoth and dinosaurs free roaming in our streets. Okay, by the way, this is really difficult. We have been trying to tackle the housing stock. Governments of different parties tried to implement the Green Deal, which sounded quite great at the beginning, until realized didn't quite have the right numbers to work. And still today, tackling existing housing stock is what we need to do as an industry. Now, can we try and wrap it together? Okay, so if I used IoT in an open and engaging way, making sure that our industry understands the opportunity behind IoT, making sure that every single IoT startup from the ODI starts collaborating with the big guys in my industry. If we then take government targets in terms of CO2 emissions and we make them a compulsory key performance indicator or every single project in refurbishment, we may be able to develop a culture in which the moment you refurbish your home is the moment when you take care of your planet, little by little. You know, you're not going to fix it in one day. But what's important is that we don't lose the evidence, the transparency that Peter Hansford was referring to that comes with a new construction project. So, refurbishing your home, get the right architects, designers, structural engineer, whatever, that understand the importance of data evidence. And as you do that, you might come up with a name like Space Up Decarb. Space Up Decarb is something that we're just about to launch in partnership with Open Sensors, one of the ODI startups, amazingly delivering already solutions in the realm of the IoT. And it stands for increase the space, but also improving the space and the quality of the space of existing homes. Is only focused on existing homes. And as you do that, measure your environmental footprint. Do your best at reducing your footprint. Budgets are limited and sustainability is expensive. But most importantly, making sure that you don't lose the data flow, which once aggregated could be absolutely vital to develop the new tools of the future. So Space Up Decarb, set to be the world's first crowdsourced housing open data ecosystem. It will be a website. As the data will grow and our data set will be available to a certain degree of anonymization, we have an open API and we will be happy to share with our colleagues and partners in the industry evidence that can trigger new solutions. We want to tackle transparency, through transparency, increase value in what the industry delivers, reducing costs, because transparency is the single most important enabler of cost reduction. And the 2025 strategy was very clear about this. It will be an app which will improve the relationship between supply side and demand side, and the app will actually take the data as the project unfolds without making it too complicated for our users. It will track energy and it will track CO2. Why are we doing all this? Because the only reason why we joined the construction industry is try to obviously save the world. And we know that crowdsourcing a global database of existing housing stock performance, it could be an interesting way to attempt it. The last little video I've got is version 1 of the app I just mentioned. And at the time we won some funding from Innovate UK, and we were focusing on carboy builders. From that, of course, working with BRE and the ODI, the scope expanded. But this is somehow the level of simplicity that we want to achieve, making sure that absolutely everyone will be able to use our tools.
A freshly refurbished home. Feels great, right? All the new materials, bright colours and crisp details. But it's a shame the building work had to be such a nightmare. All the spiralling costs and mixed messages and the mistakes on site. Why does construction always need to be so complex? Well, because it is. Every project is made of many tasks. Each task has variables. Each variable comes with risks. So, in order for every task to run smoothly, you've either got to be seriously lucky or pay the premium for professional management. Or, try Project Easy. It's free. Project Easy is a project management app designed for small construction projects. Project Easy enables real-time monitoring, progress and payment transparency, improved communication and collaboration. One app, two interfaces, one for the client and one for the contractor. Project Easy will gather all the key project data, including task start, duration, predecessors and lead times. Once the data is logged, Project Easy will create a project program and keep both client and contractor up to date with what needs doing. Real-time tracking of progress means any potential risks or delays are flagged in advance before they can become a problem. Project Easy keeps an open logbook and makes communication, budgeting and monitoring easy. Project Easy. Nice home. Easy.
The cheesy factor was beyond control. Right, so why am I here today? Well, because I need your help. I need the tech industry to realize that there's a huge opportunity in the construction industry. And we need to work together because we don't know how to code. We build stuff, but we know that we produce a huge amount of data. And if we collaborate and we keep our data set open and we keep at bay the huge monsters of proprietary licensed software packages, we might develop something interesting. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. And on a personal level, if anyone can help Antonio in his goals and enable me to buy a house with a click on Facebook or equivalent, please do that for future. It would save a lot of stress for a lot of us, I'm sure. I'm going to open the floor up to questions. Please feel free to ask anything as deep and meaningful as you wish. Those who are male, pale, stale and overweight, you are just as welcome as the rest of us to ask questions, I'm sure. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, good. Who would like to kick off? If you'd like to say your name and company, you're welcome to, but you don't have to.
Hello, my name's Michael. I don't think this is on. Can you just tell me what the link is between Space Up, Decarb and Easy project?
Yes. The author would be the first answer, and the possibility to deliver easy-to-use, very intuitive tools that could develop as the project develops, feeding back to the server important metrics from which we can start mapping how the hardest part of the industry to monitor actually works. There is a difference between the big flagship development and the small domestic market. It's almost like two different industries. I remember having a conversation with Keith Clark, a really clever guy. And he told me, the fundamental problem in the industry is that there are at least 4 different industries. I'm not going to bore you, but Shard doesn't actually sit in the same league as your home. So the Shard is quite easy to monitor. It's the best practice of anything. BIM, dataset, energy mapping, anything. A small Victorian house, it's very, very hard to track. Now the problem is that we've got one Shard and shitloads of Victorian houses. So what's the relationship between Space Up, Decarb and Project Easy? Project Easy, or something like Project Easy, will become the app in the ecosystem of real-time data tools that Space Up, Decarb would need to produce an open data platform.
I should point out the mic is for the benefit of the live stream and the YouTube recording, so it doesn't sound like you're mic'd up, but you are. Thank you.
I've got a few questions, but how are you going to deal with the problems of the entrenched interests in industry? One colleague was working on this sort of energy reduction approximately 26 years ago. He'd worked out a system of insulation which would add $5,000 to the cost of a house, but add $10,000 to the price and to the value, and would knock approximately about maybe $1,000, $1,500 a year off your energy bills. And this was back in the beginning of the 1990s. He tried pitching it to BAT, and he tried Wimpy and all the people who were doing the large-scale mass manufacturing, and they weren't interested. He actually managed to get some results, and it in Germany, which is what became the pacifist standard. Basically, when they were looking at when the Barrett and Wimpey's were looking at this, said, well, yeah, that's okay, but we're not going to do it like that. How are you going to get past this particular problem?
It goes back to what Peter Ansel was saying earlier in the video. It's a risk-averse leadership. Not everyone in the industry is risk-averse. It just happens that the leaders are most of the times. We do things in the way we always done. And we don't need to do things in a different way because there is no demand. There is no demand because there is no evidence. So if we use transparency as our bulldozer to smash through what our demand side is asking for, we might get a different question to answer. So I do believe that transparency is the way forward. Just 20 years ago, we may not have had the benefit of Facebook or the internet. So I think that's the way technology can help us.
The other one, have you heard of the Open Building Institute? Yeah. What's it they're doing? They're coming up with an open source building designs that are modular. You can do self build. They're using the best practices in terms of insulation and sort of reducing the energy cost, both in building the house and in the long-term lifespan of the building. They're completely compliant with the American building codes, and they're using I think it was the Californian building codes because that was the most stringent of the regulations within the US. There are some people here that are doing the equivalent in the EU, where I think it's working with the German building codes, where they can produce a modular house that the basic modules will cost around 10,000 euros. This is who the.
There's kind of beyond the scope of this application because we're not dealing with new build. We're just trying to do what we can to improve transparency in the existing stock.
Okay, but on the other hand, the Project Easy, that's something that would actually fit in really nicely. But at the same time, you're going to be in direct competition with the people that are in the new in the existing industry. How are you planning on dealing with that problems?
There will be a competition, and this is mainly a network. So we don't actually rely on how quickly this service on this platform develops for the well-being of our employees. This is more like a awareness-raising project and comes straight out of the work we've done with BRE on open data in the construction industry. So to be honest, I haven't got really a business plan right now, and I'm not planning to do one for this. So we'll try to gather as much energy as possible from the ODI, BRE, Construction Excellence, and see where we get. But it's willingly lose.
Hi there, Stuart Chalmers from BRE. How important do you think it is that somebody from outside the construction industry sort of starts this? If you like, I'm thinking of your examples of Uber. Uber wasn't a taxi company who thought they're going to be a better taxi company. It was somebody who was completely outside of the taxi company industry and said, we're going to change it. And same with Airbnb. It wasn't a massive hotel company. It was somebody outside that said, we're going to change it. So I think what you're doing, saying that there needs to be some outside influence there, you're getting somebody who's not got something or not got sort of an ingrained sort of interest in the supply chain or in the construction supply chain. Do you think it's important that somebody outside the construction industry attacks it from outside, if you like?
Yeah, Stuart, I really think we need some energy from outside. I think it's absolutely essential. I remember having a really interesting conversation with a friend who is very active in sustainability. And he mentioned this metaphor, the lifeboat. Existing companies and businesses are so huge and big and have so little margins and so great operating cost, they simply haven't got the resources to turn the ship before hitting the rock. On the other hand, if they can reach out and understand how a small lifeboat could be built in a completely different mindset, in a completely different business case scenario, they might be able to save as many of the passengers as possible. So what I'm trying to say is that we just simply might have not time to turn existing businesses for the new sharing open big data economy, but we can certainly export some of our expertise in partnership with someone from outside. Absolutely agree with you.
One last question.
More an observation than a question, but this is coming. Absolutely. It's David Crew, by the way, from Turner and Townsend. Absolutely, this is coming. I mean, this you've given us here a vision of the future. I think one of the challenges is construction is so complex. There are multiple attributes associated with getting to an outcome in multiple sectors. And I think it actually, this is more of an observation. I think it needs the industry to recognise that and start to appreciate the value. There's been a lot of work that's been done recognising the fact that we're probably somewhere between 30 to 50% inefficient in the industry. So if you strip out all the waste, we could do things 30% better, 50% better. This sort of approach and this process should give us the evidence to facilitate us doing that. But it's a tricky problem, and that's, it's a problem that needs to be shared with the technology industry, and sharing, I think, is the important thing, because I think if it's protective, your piece around protectionism, which is where the construction industry comes from, and clients actually come from a protectionist type environment, we're not going to realise the rewards that will come out of it. So more an observation. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's brilliant. It's where we're going, and you presented it in a fantastic way.
Thanks. Thank you very much. It's almost like we planted you there. Thank you. Such a lovely summary. That saves me a job. Thank you very much, Antonio. Thanks to those who have asked questions today. We'll get Antonio to put his contact details back up on the slide in a moment. If anyone would like to talk to the ODI about working with us on projects such as Antonio's described today, be delighted to have a chat afterwards, or do drop us an email. I'll try and Twitter some people afterwards as well, to keep in touch. You're very welcome to join us again this time next week for Friday lunchtime lectures at the ODI. If you can't join us in person, there is the live stream. Follow it on Twitter. Thank you very much today. Let's join me in saying thank you to Antonio. Thank you.